We are not hurt by people we don't care about. Love doesn't hurt because it's not enough. It hurts because it awakens the parts of us that were once abandoned. Alain de Botton, have you ever loved someone who disappeared the moment things started to get close? At first, they were magnetic, smart, independent, mysterious. But the closer you got, the more it felt like you were locked out of a room you didn't have the key to. You were patient. You softened your tone. You gave them space. You shrank yourself to fit. And still, the distance grew, and so did the pain. You started questioning yourself. Am I asking for too much? Am I the emotional burden here? Did I just imagine this whole connection? No. You're not crazy. You're not too much. You're just loving someone with an avoidant attachment style, someone who learned early on that closeness isn't safe. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly what avoidant people do when they fall in love, and why their behavior, so often mistaken for coldness, is actually one of the clearest signs of emotional investment. Because if you don't understand what their nervous system is trying to protect, you'll stay stuck in a relationship where you feel alone even when you're not. They love you, but they don't know what to do with that love. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, love is not a refuge. It's unfamiliar territory, filled with danger. When someone begins to truly reach their emotional core, their nervous system doesn't respond with openness, it responds with alarm. Since childhood, they've learned that emotional needs are a liability. In their world, closeness isn't connection. It's a threat of being smothered, rejected, or controlled. They survive by shrinking their emotional world, building walls, and repeating one silent mantra: I don't need anyone. So when they begin to genuinely love you, that love awakens the very fear they've buried for years. And then they start to pull away. Not because they don't care, but because in their belief system, dependence equals danger. The more you matter, the more powerless they feel. And to protect that fragile sense of safety, they do what they've always known how to do. They create distance. They take longer to respond to your texts. They cancel plans without reason. They emotionally retreat, but give you no explanation. You think it's something you did, but the truth is they're panicking inside. They're afraid that if you get too close, you'll see the vulnerability they can barely accept in themselves. They're afraid that if they rely on you, you'll leave, and that old abandonment wound still lives beneath their independence. So they love you, but only from a safe distance. What's painful is this: the more you try to prove that you're safe, the more pressure they feel to withdraw. To them, loving someone isn't just an experience, it's a nervous system battle. They're not rejecting you. They're trying to protect themselves from the loss of control that love brings. And right here, between the silence and the emotional distance, a quiet paradox begins to unfold. Even though their nervous system is screaming to run, they stay. You might not hear the words, I love you. You might feel ignored, or even like they've checked out. But if you look closely, you'll notice something that's easy to miss. They haven't disappeared. For someone with avoidant attachment, staying when things get emotionally real isn't natural. It's a quiet revolution. They were raised to withdraw the moment intimacy arrived. So every time they don't leave, they're choosing you over their oldest coping mechanism. Don't let their quiet exterior fool you. They may look calm, but inside, there's a battle raging. Every day they remain is a day they fight against the instinct to protect themselves by leaving. They may never call it love, but their presence, even if inconsistent or emotionally restrained, is an unspoken declaration that you matter. For them, staying isn't just physical. It means not vanishing when emotions surface, choosing to remain, even when closeness makes their chest tight. And here's what you need to know. If you've ever seen an avoidant person stay when the relationship started getting emotionally intimate, then you've witnessed something rare. You've seen someone trying to love you, even as their instinct tells them to run. No grand gestures, no flowery words, just a quiet presence, steady in its own way. And for someone who once believed solitude was the only safety, that's the very first step of love. If presence is the first step of love in an avoidance world, then emotional sharing is their greatest test of trust. But here's the catch. They won't announce it. They won't frame it as intimacy. And they probably won't bring it up again. An avoidant won't look you in the eye and say, "I trust you." Instead, on some random afternoon, during an unrelated conversation, they might casually mention how they once felt invisible in their family, or how a childhood friend betrayed their trust. They'll drop it like it's nothing, and then change the subject, make a joke, or move on as if it never mattered. Don't mistake that for emotional detachment. That moment was emotional. That was them quietly asking, "Are you safe enough for me to show this?" Avoidants grew up learning that vulnerability leads to pain or ridicule. So when they share something, even something small, it's not just casual talk. It's a key they're placing gently in your hand. And what you do with it matters more than you know. If you pressure them, analyze them, or push for more, the door closes. But if you meet it with quiet presence, no pressure, no performance, you've created something rare. A moment where an avoidant feels safe in their softness. And when that safety registers, when they realize they weren't hurt for sharing, you'll start to see more of them, slowly but sincerely. Because once they've tested emotional exposure and survived, something remarkable happens next. They begin to love you not through words, but through action. After they've dared to show you a glimpse of their emotional world, what comes next isn't a love confession. It's not a poetic promise. It's something quieter, subtler, almost invisible. Avoidants don't speak the language of classic romance. You won't get midnight paragraphs or movie script, "I miss you" texts. Instead, they bring you your favorite coffee without asking. They fix your leaky faucet before you even notice it. They send you a link to an article you casually mentioned last week. This is how they love translating emotion into action. For them, doing feels safer than saying. Words feel exposed. Actions feel grounded. They love through quiet consistency, through noticing, through effort that asks for no applause. And in those acts, they're saying, "I see you. I remember you. I'm here even if I can't say it out loud." The tragedy is, if you're someone with anxious attachment, you might miss this. You might be waiting for grand declarations and overlook these quiet, steady gifts of affection. But for the avoidant, love lives not in what's spoken, but in what's repeated. The small, unnoticed acts of care that show up again and again without needing recognition. And when you begin to understand that, you'll see something else. Even when they pull away, they come back. Not because you chased them, but because they're learning how to love you through each retreat, each return, one quiet act at a time. After an avoidant has shown love in their own quiet ways, through presence, subtle sharing, and practical care, there comes a point where things feel too close. And for them, too close equals danger. They don't know how to sit still in intimacy. Their nervous system registers closeness as threat, not comfort. So they pull away suddenly, without warning, sometimes coldly. You might see fewer texts, less engagement, or distant excuses. But inside, it's not rejection, it's panic. Closeness reminds them of the moments when getting attached meant getting hurt. So they back off to self-regulate, to cool down the emotional heat they weren't taught to handle. But the most important part isn't that they pull away. It's this: do they come back, and how? If they return, not because you begged, guilted, or chased them, but on their own, quietly, that moment means everything. It tells you that somewhere in their internal chaos, you still register as safe. They return not because you broke yourself to keep them, but because you held your ground with love, not desperation. And with each cycle of retreat and return, they're slowly remapping their nervous system, rewiring the idea that closeness might just be survivable. They probably won't say, "I'm sorry I disappeared." They might text like nothing happened, but don't be fooled by the casual tone. They're trying again with you. And these quiet returns without being pulled are powerful signs of transformation. Signs that this person, though still healing, is beginning to choose connection over protection. And then, after all the times they came back like nothing happened, you start to see something more clearly. Love from someone with an avoidant attachment style isn't loud pursuit. It's quiet internal warfare. We're often taught that if someone loves you, they'll chase you. They'll make it clear. They'll leave no room for doubt. So when the person you love pulls away, goes quiet, or disappears during meaningful moments, it's easy to assume they don't really care. End. But with avoidance, the truth is often the opposite. You see, they don't call you, they don't think of you, but they might be sitting alone in a dark room, holding the phone, opening your message thread a dozen times, and then closing it because they're terrified that reaching out will make their emotions spiral out of control. They don't text long paragraphs, not because you don't matter, but because they don't know how to say what they feel without feeling exposed, needy, or out of control. Their love doesn't pour out, it runs deep and underground. And sometimes, what looks like coldness is actually their greatest effort to not let their feelings overwhelm them. For someone with avoidant attachment, love is a collision between genuine emotion and the terror of being hurt. And if you look closely, you'll realize they're not heartless, they're just trying not to let love break them. After everything, you might start to realize a difficult truth. They're not heartless, but they're not easy to love either. And if you're in love with someone avoidant, you don't just need a loving heart, you need emotional clarity and strength. Because loving an avoidant isn't about waiting for them to change. It's about learning how to read love in a language that doesn't use words while still not abandoning yourself just to hold on to the connection. Here's what you need to understand. 1, don't personalize the distance. When they pull away, your instinct will be to ask, what did I do wrong? But the truth is, you didn't do anything wrong. They're just panicking inside. Don't let their withdrawal become a question of your worth. 2, watch their actions, not just their words. An avoidant may never say, I love you, but they'll remember that you hate onions and quietly ask the waiter to remove them. They'll drive 30 minutes out of their way just to bring you a charger. Their love lives in the small, consistent acts, quiet but real. 3, don't force them to open up, but don't bury yourself in endless waiting either. Yes, patience is needed, but that doesn't mean erasing yourself to prove you're safe. Real love doesn't come from fixing someone else. It comes from knowing what boundaries protect your wholeness. If you love them, love with understanding, but also with self-respect. Be a place they can return to in safety, but don't make yourself the only shore for a ship that doesn't know when it will dock. Because loving an avoidant is a parallel journey. They're learning how to come closer, and you're learning how to stay whole without shrinking yourself just to keep someone who isn't yet ready to stay. Loving someone with an avoidant attachment style is not for the faint of heart. It asks you to hold space for their silence, to decipher emotions hidden behind small actions, and to stay grounded when they pull away, not because you're passive, but because you understand the battlefield inside them. But here's the truth. Compassion doesn't mean self-abandonment. Understanding their fears doesn't mean you should silence your own needs. Being patient doesn't mean putting your life on hold, waiting for someone to become emotionally available. The healing journey isn't about fixing them. It's about becoming the kind of person who can hold empathy and boundaries at the same time. It's realizing that yes, they may be scared of intimacy, but you should never have to prove that you're worthy of being loved openly. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is not chase, not plead, not shrink to fit into their comfort zone, but instead to say, I see you, I care, but I won't disappear to be loved by you. If they return on their own, not out of guilt, but from growth, then there is potential. But if they only stay when you abandon yourself, then that's not love. That's survival disguised as connection. So let this be your reminder. Real love isn't earned through suffering. It's built in safety, reciprocity, and emotional presence. You don't have to chase love that backs away from you. You only need to honor the kind of love that's willing to meet you halfway. And sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is choose to walk away from what hurts even when your heart still wants to stay.